I don't want Horizon 6 to take place in Japan, and yet I'm starting to think it will. Over the past few years, there have been more and more very small, very ignorable signs that might mean nothing, or might actually be pointing to Horizon's next location. And in this video, I want to lay out all the evidence on the table and make a case for why I am genuinely starting to believe that we may already have an idea of where Horizon 6 will take place. Now let's just get this disclaimer out of the way. This video is nothing more than some lighthearted but still evidence-based speculation. None of us know where the next Horizon game will actually be. As fans of the series though, it's fun to talk about where it could take place, and it's a discussion that comes up all the time on my live streams, so I figured I would kind of condense it all into one video that covers all the possible evidence we have, my own thoughts on the location, and when we might see the next game. So if we're trying to look forward to find info about Horizon 6, we should actually start by looking backwards. What hints did Horizon 4 give us about Horizon 5? Well, there's a handful of now pretty obvious ones relating to new features, the most popular being the Blueprint Builder, which was released in December 2020, about 6 months before Horizon 5 was announced. And obviously, the Blueprint Builder was a test bed for what became the Event Lab in Horizon 5. We also saw some early hints about Horizon 5 in Horizon 4's LEGO expansion. The brick challenges were very likely a test to see if players would want the accolade system that was added to Horizon 5. In Horizon 4's other expansion, Fortune Island, we also got the iconic Needle Climb. Horizon had never really been good about adding long, twisty, winding mountain roads in their games. Instead, it's always been known for much more high-speed, smooth, and wide streets. But of course, players had been asking for a mountain pass for ages, and we finally got that in this expansion. Needle Climb, to this day, is by far the most populated area of the DLC map. And I believe that was a bit of a testing the waters situation to see if players actually did respond well to tighter mountain roads. And lo and behold, Horizon 5's base map got the Vulcan Sprint, a big hill climb up the volcano. Now, none of this really pointed us towards Mexico. In fact, the entire community was blindsided by that reveal. There was an early leak of sorts from Jez Corden, a well-known journalist, in late April, a few months before the official reveal, that said, "I really want to visit Mexico someday," with a Mexican flag emoji next to a car emoji. Gaming news sites did pick this up, and the rumor spread throughout the community, but a lot of folks, me included actually, dismissed it because it definitely wasn't the most popular or likely location for the next game. I mean, to be honest, ever since Horizon 3, people have been speculating that the next game would definitely be in Japan, and every time the whole community is surprised by where the game actually does end up taking place. That said, outside of that tweet from Jez, there was one more potential hint that the next game would take place in Mexico, and that came in 2019 inside the official Xbox Series X reveal. This very short pre-rendered footage of a car drifting on a dirt road, in hindsight, certainly looks a whole lot like Mexico in Horizon 5. In fact, you can recreate a relatively similar shot in-game with the exact same car, so it's not unreasonable to assume that this was perhaps just some early concept footage of Horizon 5. Considering that though, it's worth pointing out that every single Horizon location has been a surprise, and even though I am starting to think Horizon 6 will be in Japan, I certainly would still not be surprised if we were all surprised as to where the next game actually ends up. With that said, let's actually get into some of the concrete reasons why I think Japan might be the Horizon Festival's next stop. We're going to start with possibly the biggest piece of evidence I have. On May 14th of last year, 2 different Turn 10 employees confirmed 2 things. One, that 9 existing cars currently in Horizon would be getting brand new models, and 2, that those new models would likely not be coming to any existing Forza game, and would instead likely come out with future games. Now we know that there isn't another Forza Motorsport in the works. Turn 10 has said that their plan is to support the current Motorsport game for many years as a platform, not just a bi-yearly release as they were in the past. So if we know they aren't scanning these cars for Motorsport, and they certainly aren't scanning them for Horizon 5, well then the logic follows that they are likely being scanned for Horizon 6. Now, what does this have to do with Japan? Well, over half of the cars being rescanned are Japanese cars. We can now be fairly confident, based on this information, that the next Horizon game will have brand new models for the FD RX-7, Evo 6, R32 GTR, a E86, and the infamous S15. The other cars being scanned are the Ferrari 575M, E30 M3, Viper ACR, and 03 Ford Focus. So 2 American cars, 2 Euros, and 5 Japanese cars. Obviously, this could mean nothing. A more level-headed response to this information would just be to say that, well, players care more about the Japanese car models. You know, everyone complains about the 8.6 and the S15 alongside many of the other Japanese cars, but you almost never hear complaints about the European or American car models. So the Japanese majority here could simply be nothing more than a response to player feedback. And since players are giving more feedback on the Japanese cars, they're remodeling more of those. However, if I put on my tinfoil hat, I think that a game set in Japan gives them a much better reason to rescan more of those Japanese cars. And it actually goes a lot further than this. You may remember that we got 2 new-to-the-game Japanese cars somewhat recently, a Nissan Stagea and a Toyota Soarer. Here's what's interesting about those. The Soarer is literally just an SC300. They're the exact same car sold to different markets, and with different trim and engines if you want to get picky, but the body is the same. And the SC300 has been in the game forever, so there was no dire need to go out and scan and model a new Japanese version of the car when they could have just used the existing SC300 model to build the Soarer. But they did go out and scan a Soarer. The models in-game are very noticeably different. Now let's look at the Stagea. You can install an R34 front clip onto the Stagea in-game. This is actually a somewhat popular modification done in real life, and it's not just some custom-made kit that looks like an R34 but is meant to fit the Stagea. You are actually putting R34 parts onto the Stagea. So Playground Games could have just taken the front end of the existing R34 in-game and worked that part of the model onto the Stagea. But the Stagea's R34 front end is a different, newer model compared to the actual Skyline we already have in-game. So again, it's clear that PGG are going out of their way to scan new Japanese car models when they don't really have to. Don't get me wrong, the effort is appreciated either way, but I think it's worth noting that this is a bit abnormal for Playground to do. I mean, both Forza games are notorious for using decade-old car models, so why now, within the last year, have we been seeing a ton of refreshed Japanese cars? Let's even take this a little bit further. What car pack just got announced? The Nissan Heritage Pack, which contains Nissan's pretty rare Pike factory vehicles. These were never officially sold outside of Japan, and while they do exist elsewhere due to private importers, the likelihood of finding all 4 of them in museum quality for scanning outside of Japan is fairly unlikely. But you know where they do have nearly 40-year-old museum quality Nissans? At Nissan's Heritage Museum in Japan. Certainly seems like Playground is getting a whole lot of models from there lately. And real quick, what was the last car pack we got before that? It was the JDM Jewels car pack that contained even more old Japanese cars that would be somewhat hard to find in high quality outside of Japan. Now, doesn't it seem like a good business idea to make extra money scanning all of these cars for your next game by also selling them as DLC for your current game? Yeah, it does, and Playground and Turn 10 have been doing that forever. We very often will pay for a car as DLC once and then get it for free later, or we'll pay for a car as DLC in Horizon and then get it for free in Motorsport, or vice versa. They cross-pollinate the car models all the time, and it's completely reasonable to assume that they are just scanning all these Japanese cars for their new game and then double dipping on the profit by selling them as DLC for Horizon 5. To be clear, by the way, I don't think this is wrong. I'm not like trying to call them out on that practice. I just think it's worth letting you guys know that this is a thing they do, and we might be able to extrapolate some information from that. Within the last year, we know for a fact that they have scanned dozens of new Japanese car models, and I genuinely think that there could be something to that. It could still mean nothing, but that is just one piece of data on my evidence board. So let's move on to our next topic. Forza Horizon, for the first time ever, is coming to PlayStation 5. And while this could absolutely just be part of the much larger marketing push we've seen across all of Xbox to bring their games over to new platforms, why do you think Horizon was one of the first to make the jump? Perhaps it's because their next game takes place in Japan and they're trying to expand into that market. I mean, the Xbox is not at all popular in Japan or Asia as a whole to that point, and we also know that Japanese automakers have in the past refused to license their cars to non-Japanese games, while still being comfortable with their use in games like Gran Turismo that do come out of Japan. So perhaps, in order to help negotiate licensing terms for a lot of these older and sometimes more obscure Japanese cars, Playground and Xbox said, hey, look, our next game is in Japan, we're bringing the series to PS5, and it's going to be a big celebration of Japanese culture. I mean, it's kind of what Horizon games are good at anyway. Horizon 5's map may not be that interesting to drive on, but it is steeped in accurate Mexican iconography and 3D scanned landmarks. I don't have anything specific that's really strong that I can point to and say, aha, Horizon coming to PS5 definitely means the next game will be in Japan, but the vibes are strong with this one. I think it's very convenient timing to bring one of Xbox's biggest first-party titles over to a Japanese console. I mean, they can get the Asian market hooked on Horizon 5, build that hype for the series, and then drop 6 in Japan shortly after. It just feels like a good business idea. And again, we haven't seen many other big Xbox games move to PlayStation. Yet, anyway. Horizon is definitely the big one here, and I don't think that means nothing. Alright, now you still might not be convinced, and that's totally fair. I've got more up my sleeve. Let's go back to that bit about looking at previous games to predict the future. Horizon 2's Storm Island DLC was a tropical island with a lot of extreme weather. And what did we get in Horizon 3? A tropical island continent with a lot of rain. Horizon 3's non-toy themed DLC was Blizzard Mountain. And then what did we get in Horizon 4? The first map with a lot of snow. Horizon 4's non-toy themed DLC had the Needle Climb, the longest hill climb and highest elevation in Horizon's history. And then what did we get in Horizon 5? A really big hill climb with the highest elevation in Horizon's history. So what does Horizon 5's non-toy themed DLC have? Well, a lot of narrow roads with a lot of tight corners and rapid elevation change. I think this could be Playground testing to make sure players actually do want this type of road, so that when they add in a bunch of tight, windy Toge mountain passes in Horizon 6, they know we'll actually like it. And good news, the general consensus is that Rally Adventure has some of the best roads in all of Horizon's history, and that's a sentiment I share as well. So this one might be a bit of a stretch, but the patterns are there, and I think at the very least we can feel confident that Horizon 6 will add a lot more narrow, windy roads after they saw the positive reception to Rally Adventure. Now let's talk a bit more about previous Horizon locations. They've covered North America twice, Europe twice, and Australia. Speaking to continents, that means there are reasonably 2 options left for the next game: Africa or Asia. Now, obviously they haven't gone to South America either, and while I do think there's a lot of potential there, Brazil comes up often when talking about locations, I still think it would be unlikely to have a game in South America right after a game set in Mexico. And obviously there is a lot of unique identity between any South American country and Mexico, so please don't write in the comments like, what do you mean Mexico and Argentina aren't the same? And I know, but speaking very broad strokes on a global geographic scale, I just think it's unlikely for Playground to follow up a Mexico map with a South America map, wherever that may be. I also think it's a bit more unlikely for them to return to either North America or Europe for a 3rd time, or of course Australia again, before hitting these other continents. Again, while there is a ton of potential all around the world, you know, they could easily do a Pacific Northwest map or a Germany or Sweden or something like that, and those would feel quite different from what we've had up to this point. I just think that the safer bet is on them covering a new continent. And between Africa and Asia, I think Asia is more likely. Again, broadly geographically speaking, because it has a bit more of a stark contrast to Mexico's landscape, foliage, and architecture, and likely has a bit more player interest. Now this brings us to an interesting topic, because obviously Asia is very big. I mean, a Horizon in Asia could still mean Western Russia or Qatar or India, which by the way I think would be really cool, but I think Horizon's community has Playground in a bit of a chokehold because, well, just close your eyes and do this thought experiment with me. Imagine that the hype for the next Horizon game is rising and the possibility of Japan is there. It's summer, and Xbox is holding their big E3 style presentation. Then a trailer opens on a car drifting through the mountains at night, driving down twisty, narrow roads past long standing temples. Oh my gosh, could this really be Horizon 6 in Japan? Then the scene changes to a quaint coastal fishing village with beautiful gardens and scenery. Holy crap, they're really doing it. And finally, the trailer crescendos with a drag race in a bustling East Asian city filled with neons and life, where the streets are lined with cherry blossoms. Horizon Japan is here! And finally, the title card appears: Forza Horizon 6 Malaysia. I shudder to think of the social media reaction of millions of Horizon fans being teased a Japan game and then having it end up somewhere else in Eastern Asia. And to be clear, I think Malaysia or South Korea or anywhere else like that would actually be so sick. I would actually prefer it to Japan. But the internet would not, and I just imagine the entire community being livid that Playground would do an Asia map not in Japan. So I feel like they kind of have to. Like, if they're gonna do Asia, it has to be Japan or the community will riot. Now, I have my own take on that, and I've kind of buried the lead on why I don't want Horizon 6 in Japan, so let's touch on that quick before we wrap up and talk about potential release dates. So my ideal Horizon game is one that takes place in Japan. I'm a big weeb and a Japanese car nerd, but I just don't think PGG, or any studio for that matter, is capable of creating my ideal Horizon game. I think the problem is expectations. The Horizon community has been begging for Japan for like a decade now, but Japan means different things to different people, and there's just no way any studio could meet the expectations of every player, because without a doubt, they won't be able to fit in every landmark, JDM car, or famous road that players want to see. I mean, real talk here. Let's say they actually do Japan. There's no way Tokyo is going to be in that map. I mean, the real size of Tokyo and its surrounding metro area, including Yokohama, is like 10 times the size of Horizon 5's entire map, including the DLCs. And they just couldn't really scale down Tokyo to a city the size of Guanajuato or Surfer's Paradise, for example. It would feel so wrong. For some comparison, the real Guanajuato city is about 15 square kilometers, and the biggest city they've ever replicated in-game is Edinburgh at about 110 square kilometers. Tokyo's city center alone, without the surrounding metro area, is well over 600. So if they do Japan, it wouldn't have Tokyo, which also means no Tokyo Highway Network, no Bayshore, no C1, no Daikoku, no UDX Parking Garage or Akiba. I can see the angry Reddit threads now of players furious that Playground has no idea what Japanese car culture is like because how could they not add so-and-so landmark or so-and-so car? A lot of people care a lot about a lot of Japan, and the internet can get kind of weird about that. I mean, look at what's happening with Assassin's Creed Shadows. People have been begging for an AC game in Japan since the very first game. And now here we are finally getting one, and the internet has absolutely torn it to shreds. I hate to be pessimistic, but I fear that a similar reaction would happen with a Horizon in Japan. People have been wanting it for so long that the expectations have ballooned out of control, and there's just no way it could make everyone happy. So instead, I would like to see an East Asia game not in Japan, because depending where else they chose, it could have similar vibes and scenery to Japan, but without all the expectations that a Japan map would bring. So that's my thought with it all. Even though my perfect Horizon game would be in Japan, realistically, I would rather see them do a place like Malaysia or South Korea. That said, based on everything I've brought up in this video so far, I am starting to think Japan might happen. Xbox needs wins, and Horizon Japan feels like an easy win. I mean, obviously it would sell like hotcakes. I'm just nervous about the fan reception. So to wrap us up, I just want to quickly throw out my predictions for a potential release date. Between around 2010 to 2020, Motorsport and Horizon were both bi-yearly releases. One year we got a Motorsport, the other year we got a Horizon. However, that has not been the case for the past few games. The new Motorsport took 6 years. The gap between Horizon 4 and 5 was 3 years, and we are now over 3 years into Horizon 5, without any announcement of 6 yet. Both Playground and Turn 10 have also always followed the pattern of announcing their games during the summer around E3 time, and then releasing them that same year between about September to November. However, the latest Motorsport broke that pattern as well, as it was announced about 3 years before it was finally released. So because the industry is changing, I think that past patterns cannot be trusted to predict the future here. I do still think we would see an announcement in June around post E3 time, and I do still think the game would release around the holidays, but that's kind of it. So here's my prediction. Playground will announce Horizon 6 this year. Horizon 5, as we all know, has approached end of life-ish, and the only big thing left that we know of is the PS5 launch, and whatever updates may come with that. And I think that makes this summer a great time to announce Horizon 6. You know, capitalize on the huge new PS5 market, as well as making sure the existing fan base stays interested without a big gap year of no Horizon updates. However, I think they'll break form and release the game holiday 2026. Playground is also working on another game, Fable, which was originally slated to release holiday 2025. And even though PGG is split between a Fable team and a Forza team, releasing two big games right next to each other for a somewhat smaller AAA studio is very uncommon. So even though Fable did get delayed to 2026, and that could maybe mean they needed to pull some people back onto the Forza team to get the game out earlier, I think it's much more likely that they planned to have Fable be their 2025 release and Horizon be their 2026 release. You could also make an argument for studios wanting to avoid GTA 6, and Horizon especially has at least some market overlap there, but I'll be honest, if anything, the best evidence for Horizon in 2026 is that we know roughly how long it takes for them to scan cars, up to a year sometimes. And we know that they've still been hiring recently on the Forza team for pretty major art and map design roles. In some cases, specifically for people with experience designing modern buildings or landscapes, which lightly could imply that the map could still be pretty early on. And that, combined with the news that they were just starting to rescan some cars in May of last year, makes me think that Horizon 6 is still too early on for a 2025 release. So, while there are a handful of small, seemingly innocent things that maybe stacked together could point us towards the next game being in Japan in 2026, ultimately there is obviously no smoking gun here. Nothing is even remotely definitive, and while I do think now that it's more likely we get a Japan map, I'm still expecting to be surprised. Like I said near the start of the video, we have never successfully predicted the next Horizon location. We didn't even know Horizon 5 was coming at all until the moment we all saw the trailer. And if there's any pattern we can trust in, I think it's the fact that we are and have always been totally clueless. Thanks everyone for watching. Obviously there is a lot of discussion to be had on this topic, so definitely let me know what you think. Did this video maybe sway your own opinion at all, or is there any evidence for Japan that I might have missed, or maybe even evidence for another location? Either way, let me know. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.